Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another Game of Thrones Day, Sunday, episode 6. Holy cow. We'll try to go from beginning to end as usual. We may jump around a bit because that was an emotional episode. We're going to start out. We got Jon in the north. We see a lot of chatter between call them the companions of the wall, as they head north beyond the wall to find an undead to bring back to Cersei to prove to her where the true battle should be fought. It was cool. Most of this episode was a filler episode, to be honest with you, because it was a lot of chit-chat, particularly between Jon and his group. It was some funny stuff. You know, we got to see how in love Tormund really is with Brienne of Tarth, and the recognition on the Hound's face that it's Brienne that he's talking about. We see a little bit more between Gendry and the priest and Lord Beric. And then we see Jon offer Mormont his dad's sword, which he refuses because he knows that that's where his dad, Lord Mormont would have wanted the sword to go, was to Jon. And he even gives Jon that little nudge, may it serve you and your kids. So maybe he's speaking into existence, as all things in Game of Thrones do, when it's said that Jon will have babies. So maybe if he hooks up with Daenerys, that's a foreshadow that maybe her infertility may have just been a short-lived thing. I don't know. That's hoping for those of you that want to see Jon and Daenerys babies, but whatever. We also got to see the really cool undead polar bear just rip through the party. Honestly, it did a lot less damage than I thought a giant polar bear would or could have to that particular group. But either way, that polar bear was probably 2 times the size of a normal polar bear, and it was undead. But honestly, they kind of made short work of it. It was weird to see the Hound still afraid of fire. I kind of figured he'd be past that by now. But, again, that's something from his childhood. I think what's going to happen is we're going to see him fight the Mountain, and fire is going to be the only thing that can kill the Mountain. And I think, honestly, either the Hound and the Mountain are going to die in fire, or the Hound's going to have to use fire to kill the Mountain. That's just my theory. That's my prediction for where that particular story is headed for the Hound. But I don't know. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost positive that it's the Hound and the Mountain are going to have to duke it out. And that's where their story's going to kind of find its finality. So, beyond that, we do see some other chit-chatter with them. Then they find a small party of undead. And they take out most of the party. They take out most of the party except for one undead, so we kind of see when he kills the one White Walker, most of that party drops dead. So they're connected to one White Walker specifically, and I'm assuming the only reason that other undead didn't die was because he wasn't turned. And they kind of mention that in the show as well, that's the group's theory, that's not the one that turned them. But we'll see. So when that happens, they fight that small party. Well, then they realize that the bigger army is actually out there, and that this looks like this was a trap set by the White King. So he sends Gendry to run off to Eastwatch in order to get a raven to Daenerys because they're trapped, they're in trouble. So then they get on this little rock, and as the undead come towards this rock, the water around it kind of crumbles in. And then we bounce over and we see Daenerys and Tyrion, and they're having their argument in regards to how Daenerys acted as far as killing the Tullys. And, Tyrion doesn't want to see her go down the same route that her dad did. So he's trying to guide her in this right direction, but she's still young. She's a young ruler. She knows what she wants, and so she's very strong-headed as far as that's concerned. So she's not going to be easily controlled. But he does give her advice as far as when they meet with Cersei and dealing with Cersei and how and the fact that Cersei's going to take low jabs at her to kind of anger her so that some kind of fight will break out during the discussion, because that's the way Cersei is, you know. And even Cersei, you kind of see that she is laying this trap for Daenerys. She's like, oh, like, you can see it when Cersei was talking to Jaime about it. Well, we'll just meet and we'll go fight this war that they want to fight, but then I'm going to stab her in the back. And you know that's the way Cersei's thinking. So Tyrion is trying to tell Daenerys, you know, be careful, be wary, and she gets some shots back at him as far as him telling her, you know, I'm in it for the long haul. I want to make sure that in the end everything's good further down the road, not just now. And she tells him, you know, basically, if you hadn't been so focused on the future and paid attention to the now, maybe we wouldn't have lost Highgarden or the land or the Rock. So those two, I don't know. They fight like brother and sister. That's all I'm gonna say. So maybe that's what we're gonna get from them going forward. So then we bounce over to Arya and Sansa at Winterfell, and Arya brings the note to Sansa, and you can tell Arya's super pissed, and that's Littlefinger's whole goal. He's trying to separate them to cause Sansa to pull more to his side and trust him and listen to him. So by planning that note he knew Arya would find, he's put a wedge between them a little bit further. So then we find out that Sansa's going to send Breen to the Red Keep to stand in her place as the head of the North. And Breen kind of plants that seed. You know, what if Littlefinger's been talking behind your back? You know, and he's been telling people this, and this, and he's got them on his side and not actually your side. So you kind of see that tumble start clicking into place for Sansa. And then we bounce back to Daenerys, or we bounce back to where Gendry makes it to Eastwatch and tells Davos, you know, send a raven to Daenerys. And then we bounce over to Dragonstone, where we see Daenerys headed for her dragons, and Tyrion's like, no, you can't go. And she's like, well, if I don't go, you know, they could die. And Tyrion's like, well, that was their, you know, that was, they understood that. And she's like, look, I'm gonna go, you know. And he's like, well, sometimes letting things happen, leaving or not doing something is the best thing. And she heads off anyways. So we bounce over, and it's kind of like Jon and his party are going to make their last stand. We almost lose Tormund to the Undead, which I kind of figured they would kill him off. I'm surprised he's lasted this long, especially after his proclamation at the beginning about him being in love with Breen and stuff like that. I kind of assumed they would kill him in this episode, because a lot of people are getting attached to him. But it kind of seems like now that George R.R. Martin isn't in the mix, less people are dying. I don't know if anybody's noticed that. R.R. Martin doesn't have control of the book. He doesn't have control of the story. He's not helping write any of these episodes. A lot less people seem to die, or a lot less important people seem to die. So, whereas he's like, oh, let's kill this person, and this person, and this person. Oh, he's a fan favorite, let's kill this person. That's not happening as much now, and maybe that's because Martin doesn't have his pen in this particular inkwell. So, again, like I said, I figured he'd go. We did see them lose the Fire Priest. He basically succumbed to the wounds he took from the bear bite, where the Hound didn't really do anything to help him out. And then he basically fell asleep while they were on this rock overnight, and died of his wounds. And so, before we get back to Jon and them facing their last stand, we see the Hound, like he's antsy, so he starts chunking rocks. So he hits the skeleton with one rock. Well, the next rock hits the ice and skids to a stop, and that's when the Undead Army realizes that the water has frozen back over, and it looks like it might be thicker than it was before. And so they barrel in, and they barrel in and they're fighting back and forth. That's when we almost lose Tormund. So then we get to where it looks like it's their last stand. Jon's, you know, it's Battle of the Bastards all over again. He pulls up his sword, he's got it in the baseball swing, and then all of a sudden he hears a sound, he ducks, and that's when we see the dragons come in, and they start burning undead left and right, and they're taking them out like they're nothing, no big deal. They get the one undead that they came to capture on the dragon. Everybody's on the dragon, and then moron Jon decides he's going to be big and bad, and he's going to show how much of a a hero he is, and he's charging in there and he's killing stuff instead of just getting on the dragon so they can fly away. Well, then steps up the White King, hurls his giant icicle lance and kills one of our dragons, one of the 3 beautiful, gorgeous, fire-breathing, flying worms of the sky. Just drops it like it is a fly on the wall. And you know every Game of Thrones fan cussed out loud. Living rooms across the world shook as people screamed to the heavens that dragon went down. So then it goes down, and then he sees the White King, one of the White Walkers, grab another lance, and he tells Daenerys to go. Or Jon does. He sees the White Walker grab another lance, yells at Daenerys to go, and that's when he's tackled and drug in the water, and that's when she heeds Tyrion's advice that sometimes it's best just to go. She flies off, the other dragon's gone, and they fly off back to Eastwatch, and then we see a Longclaw laying on the ice. Of course, we know Jon's not going to die. We see his hand come out, pulls himself up, and he's stumbling back, pretty much frozen to the bone because it's super cold up there. We're talking Arctic weather. Then he's in the water. He's soaked. He's a popsicle. And the undead notice him, so they start coming towards him. And then we see Uncle Benjen, cold hands to the book readers, come plowing through the undead, swinging his flaming flail chain thing. He gets to Jon, throws him on the horse, and shoves Jon off, and then that's when we see Cold Hands make his last stand. Uncle Benjen goes down fighting to save Jon Snow and get him back safely. So we bounce back after that over to Arya and Sansa. Sansa's snooping around in Arya's room trying to find the note so she can destroy it. She comes across Arya's collection of faces, and that's when Arya comes in and all but threatens Sansa, like gives her that creepy vibe, like I wonder what it'd be like to wear your face in those pretty dresses, and all I need's your face, and yada yada yada. And I don't know, it's just all she's doing is, by creating the fear in Sansa, she's pushing Sansa closer to Littlefinger, where we want her to stop getting so close to Littlefinger. We want her to join the Starks and kill Littlefinger, because he's making me angry and he needs to go. Can't stand him. Littlefinger needs to die. He's going to screw something up, and somebody's going to die because of him again. He started the whole thing. Oh, I want Bran to kill him. I want Bran to warg into something. Just kill Littlefinger now. Let's make this happen. We're gonna hashtag kill Littlefinger. Let's get him dead. Anyways, so like I said, Arya all but threatens Sansa, and then hands her the knife and walks away because she's not afraid of Sansa. She knows Sansa won't try anything. I don't know what's gonna happen with those two. I don't know if they're gonna get into a knockdown drag out, and Arya's gonna kill Sansa, or Sansa's gonna call the guards on Arya. But by finding the faces and explaining to Sansa that she can be anybody, it brings little seed that Littlefinger could have been planning rumors in all the guards and all the lords' heads. It kind of falls back that now maybe it was Arya because she can change faces. So it's crazy. It's crazy. Littlefinger needs to go, though. Then we bounce back over to Daenerys standing on top of Eastwatch at the wall, and we see Mormont come up, and he's like, we should go in, and she's like, just a little bit longer. And then she goes to turn and go in, and that's when they hear about a rider coming in, and that's when we see Jon. And they get him on a boat with Targaryen sails, and they're trying to get his clothes off him. You see where it's like his clothes have frozen solid around him, and they're just trying to pack him in heat. And then Daenerys gets to see all the wounds. So that metaphoric stab in the heart that he told her Davos was talking about, she now knows is real. And then she sees all the other wounds. She was super happy to see him because as much as it hurt to lose one of her kids, she's in love with Jon, and so losing him was like a second nail in that little coffin. So when Jon finally comes to, Daenerys is on the side of the bed, and they chit-chat for a little bit, and she's like, I'm with you. Those were my kids. You were right. And, he's like, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have had you come. I shouldn't have come north. And she's like, no, if you hadn't, then I would have never known. And he's right. She would have never thought that this was where the battle should begin, because, she just watched a guy drop one of her dragons, which is the size of a friggin' giant boat, basically, with one spear. So she knows where the true battle has to go. So she's refocused. She knows she's got to get south to the Red Keep and convince Cersei to send the armies north so that they can defend the north from the Undead and the White King. But then you see that, you see him look longingly at her, and she realizes that that's the look that Tyrion was talking about, and they kind of hold hands for longer than they should, so that it's less of a consoling and more of a lay down next to me and let's get warm together kind of situation. But the loss of the dragon this episode is probably the biggest impact. We lost the Red Priest, and so Lord Beric doesn't have any more lives left. Once he goes, he's gone. But the dragon's the biggest thing, because that's the biggest attack to Daenerys. Yeah, she's lost armies and she's lost men during this, but she's always had the dragons to fall back on, because it's always been, my dragons are super big, they're super powerful, they can take on anything. They've been the main driving force behind her armies. People are afraid of them, but now one of them can easily be killed. So I think that was a bit of a ground layer for her. It leveled the playing field for her mentally as far as this Game of the Thrones goes. She knows they're not as indestructible as they seem. So, lastly, we bounce back over to the Undead pulling chains. We know what's going on. They're pulling the dragon out of the water, and they get it up on the ice, and the White King walks over to it, lays his hand down on it, and because they gotta be suspenseful, we stare at his eyelids until finally they pop open and turn blue. The White King has a dragon, ladies and gentlemen, so the question is, Undead dragon, can it breathe fire? Because it looked like when he speared it, it took out what I would assume are these sacks that control its flame abilities. So, do we have a dragon that's just a dragon, or do we have a dragon that can breathe fire? Do we have a dragon that can breathe ice because it's been brought back to life from the White King? Who knows? But next episode is the last episode of this season, which means we're not going to see anything be completely taken care of. I didn't even realize that this was the 6th episode and we only had 1 episode left. But we definitely know that the war for Westeros, the war with the White King, none of that's going to be taken care of in this season, because there's no way they're going to get it done in next episode. Which means next episode, we're either going to see a lot of bickering back and forth and bending the knee, which, by the way, Jon did tell Daenerys he would bend the knee because she is now his queen, and he'll convince the others to follow her. But the question is, can him and Daenerys get Cersei to go south with them? Or what's Cersei's big play? Is her trap going to be at the meeting? Does Daenerys have something up her sleeve that she's not telling Tyrion about? Who knows what's going to happen in the Game of Thrones, ladies and gentlemen. But next episode, next Sunday, next Game of Thrones Day is the final episode of this season until next year. Why? Why only 7 episodes? Let me know in the comments what you thought of the episode. Let me know any theories you have coming up for the final episode, or what you think they're going to do in next season when the Game of Thrones resumes in a year. God, we have 1 episode and then we have a year to wait before we find out what happens. Unless Martin writes the last book. Come on, man. The last book. Just give it to me now so I can finish this crap. I don't even care if the show's different. Let me finish the story. Anyways, enough of that. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I do thank you for watching this review with me. I thank you for joining the discussion about Game of Thrones with me. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Game of Thrones review for Season 7. Ladies and gentlemen, till next Sunday!